On August the 4th, 1914, peace, that habitually undervalued pastime, was officially ended. Crowds gathered in cities across the country to hear the great news that Britain and her empire had declared war on the Kaiser Germany. The public, whipped up into a patriotic frenzy by the newspapers, demanded the government teach Germany a lesson for her invasion of Belgium. One day later, the illuminations on Great Yarmouth seafront were extinguished, and sentries appeared at the railway station. Village post officers received instructions to extend opening hours in case of vital news. Invasion scares spread. Later that month, the British Army encountered German forces in battle for the first time. The repercussions of this action would be swift and immense. It was painfully evident that British forces were hugely outnumbered, and the call for volunteers was made. The public response was unprecedented. Recruiting stations were besieged. Britannia Barracks in Norwich was the headquarters of the Norfolk Regiment, and during the autumn of 1914, thousands of men from across the county took the King's Shilling and joined up. Others reported to Lowestoft and Yarmouth to volunteer for the Naval Reserve. All new volunteers endured a training programme from the 19th century and were subject to fierce discipline and punishment. Rifle shooting was often neglected in favour of drill. Indeed, over an average 6-month period, new recruits only had 4 shooting sessions. Nonetheless, these volunteer battalions soon found themselves in France and Belgium, pitched against a much larger professional enemy force, or at sea on hastily converted fishing trawlers on minesweeping patrol. Over 11,500 men from Norfolk were killed in the Great War, equal to 1 out of every 42 soldiers, compared to the national average of 1 out of every 57. Over 6,000 served in the Norfolk Regiment, with a third of these dying at the Battle of the Somme in 1916. This small village saw 27 of its sons die in the Great War. But beyond the cold statistics, what stories there are to be told of everyday men. Consider the contribution made by the men of Haddiscoe in these early days of 1914. Reginald Randallson, Victor Beaver, Absalom Flaxman and William Patrick all went to Norwich on the same day to join up together. Absalom Flaxman had been married in this church, and his children were christened here. As a married man, there was no compulsion for him to enlist. All of these men were farm labourers, and the army promised them adventure, 3 meals a day, and a fixed weekly wage. These men, the first volunteers from the village, were in action with the Norfolk Regiment at the Battle of Loos in 1915. There, 3 of them were killed only yards apart, mowed down by enfilade machine gun fire. Private Harold Mean of Haddiscoe would also become a victim of the human carnage at Loos. It was no better for the professional soldiers. Private Harry Hayden, the son of a Haddiscoe railway signalman, had been a smart, reliable soldier in India, acting as a special messenger at the Delhi Durbar in 1911 to mark the coronation of King George V. He was injured at the Battle of Neuve-Chapelle in March 1915, dying of wounds at the Red Cross Hospital in Rouen. He is buried in France. He was one of 11,200 British and Imperial troops to die in that battle. A breakdown in the coordinating telephone system had resulted in higher than expected losses. Private George Wright was an old hand, having served in Darjeeling after joining the army in 1900. He had re-enlisted for 4 more years in 1912, and in 1914 was posted to France, where he was killed in action on November 23rd, the first from Haddiscoe to die in the war. His body was never found, and his name is listed on the Menin Gate in Ypres. His death preceded by a month the now famous Christmas truce, where some 400 men from the Norfolk regiments called a halt to the fighting, climbed out of their trenches, and met German soldiers in no man's land on Christmas Day. Of course, the human tragedy of war is never simply confined to those involved in the fighting. Spare a thought for the widow of Private Walter Stannard, who died of abdominal wounds in July 1916 at the Somme. He and his wife Mary Ann had been married here in 1910. She was living with their 2 young children at Cliff Cottage, Haddiscoe, when they received the dreadful news. Without an income, Mary desperately needed her husband's war service pension, but things did not go smoothly. A short handwritten note held in the War Archive states, "Sir, I am sorry I have not been able to send through before, as the registrar has had scarlet fever. Her husband is buried in France." Private Henry Grimmer of Haddiscoe would likewise be killed at the Somme, aged 23, along with Private Harry Baldry, the son of a farm bailiff, and Private William Revell, a servant who left a wife and 2 small children upon his death, aged 23. Many hoped the Somme would be the breakthrough the Allies needed, but it only served to strengthen the equilibrium at the front line as 1917 approached.
Has been described as the forgotten female poet of World War I. She was born in 1893, daughter of Charles Cannon, who was Dean of Trinity College and head of the Oxford University Press. At the age of 15, May had her first poem printed in the Scotsman. Her first anthology, In Wartime, was published in 1917. Followed by The Splendid Days in 1919 and The House of Hope in 1923. In 1911, aged 18, May joined the Voluntary Aid Detachment, trained as a nurse and reached the rank of quartermaster. In 1915, she was posted to Rouen on the banks of the Seine. The city was used by the British as a supply base for recuperating men, with many hospitals stationed on its outskirts. May's 4 weeks spent working here made a profound and lasting impression on her. On return to Oxford, she became involved in the printing of propaganda material at her father's press company. In 1918, she went back to France to work in the espionage department of the War Office, Paris. Here, she recollects in a poem the exhausting and unsatisfying arrival of the armistice, drawing us close into the immediate aftermath of a new and broken world and the heartbreak of the home front. Her fiancé survived the war, but succumbed to the Spanish flu in 1919. I'm going to read May's poem, Lamplight. We planned to shape the world together, you and I, being young and very wise. Now in the light of the green shaded lamp, almost I see your eyes, light with the old gay laughter. You and I dreamed greatly of an empire in those days, setting our feet upon laborious ways. And all you asked of fame was crossed swords in the army list, my dear, against your name. We planned a great empire together, you and I, bound only by the sea, Now in the quiet of a chill winter's night, your voice comes hushed to me, full of forgotten memories. You and I dreamed great dreams of our future in those days, setting our feet on undiscovered ways. And all I asked of fame, a scarlet cross on my breast, my dear, for the swords by your name. We shall never shape the world together, you and I, for you gave your life away, and I think my heart was broken by war, since on a summer day you took the road we never spoke of. You and I dreamed greatly of an empire in those days. You set your feet upon the western ways, and have no need of fame. There's a scarlet cross on my breast, my dear, and a torn cross with your name.
I shall be singing 3 songs tonight, and the songs are based on the memories of an old chap who lived in the village where I lived. His name was Hortin Mundy. Now Hortin went to war at the very beginning, and he survived it. He was at the Battle of Arras, he was at the Battle of the Somme. He was wounded twice and also a prisoner of war. So he was a fairly... well, the fact that he came back was the miracle in itself, I guess. And when Hortin was in his 80s, we went round with an old tape recorder because he wanted to get put his memories on tape to go to the War Museum. So we recorded him talking about his experiences, and it was about 20 hours of him talking because he was a good talker and he could tell a good story. After we finished doing his stuff about the First World War, we went back again and recorded some more. In the end, we got about 40 hours of this old boy talking about his life, right from a baby and to the present, and which kind of encouraged a lot of people to go and talk to their grandfathers. A lot of them didn't want to talk, and Hortin could talk the hind legs of a donkey. He loved to talk. This first song is called the Parapet Song, and it's written by Paul Clark. I sit on the parapet, day is a-breaking, I sit and I wonder, is Jerry awake? I'd like to peek over, see dawn at its breaking, but snipers aren't quick if you make a mistake. Back in the town where I was born, people are waking this midsummer's morn. They have no cause to fear someone waiting to shoot them. It's only dawn's chill makes them shiver and shake. When Kitchener pointed his forefinger at me, I took up the challenge, went off to enlist. The barracks, the square bashing didn't deter me. Of the life that I led, there is little I missed. I hadn't seen troops take your shells direct hit, bullets and barbed wire that tear men to bits. The life of a soldier looks different to me. I won't play the hero, just try to exist. When I close my eyes, I see all the old places, the great carriage works stretching out Stratford way. And half of my friends there, I see their tired faces as they walk through the gates at the end of the day. The places we walked, the towpath, the track, half of me wishing that I could be back there. But there's no use wishing what simply can't happen. I'm here till it's over and done, come what may.
In Flanders fields. In Flanders fields the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly scare heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Well, how do you do, Private William McBride? Do you mind if I sit here down by your graveside and rest for a while neath the warm summer sun? I've been walking all day and I'm nearly done. I see by your gravestone you're only 19 when you joined the Great Fallen in 1916. I hope you died quick and I hope you died clean. Or William McBride, was it slow and obscene? Did they beat the drum slowly? Did they sound the fife lowly? Did the rifles fire o'erly as they lowered you down? Did the bugles play the last post in chorus? Did the pipes play the floors of the forest? Did you leave a wife or a sweetheart behind? In some faithful heart is your memory enshrined. And though you died back in 1916, in some faithful heart are you forever 19? Or are you a stranger without even a name, imprisoned forever behind some glass pane, in an old photograph, torn, battered, and stained, and fading to yellow in a brown leather frame? Did they beat the drum slowly? Did they sound the fire slowly? Did the rifles fire o'erly as they lowered you down? Did the bugles play the last post in chorus? Did the pipes play the floors of the forest? Well, the sun's shining down on these green fields of France. The warm wind blows gently and the red poppies dance. The trenches are vanished now under the plough. No gas, no barbed wire, no guns firing now. But here in this graveyard it's still no man's land, and the countless white crosses stand mute in the sand. To man drum slowly? Did they sound the fire slowly? Did the rifles fire only as they lowered you down? Did the bugles play the last post in chorus? Did the pipes play the flowers of the forest? And I can't help but wonder now, Willie, my bride, do all those who lie here know why they died? Did you really believe them when they told you the cause? Did you really believe that this war would end war? For the sorrow, the suffering, the glory, the pain, the killing, the dying, it was all done in vain. For Willie, my bride, it's all happening again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Did they beat the drum slowly? Did they sound the fife slowly? Did the rifles fire only as they lowered you down? Did the bugles play the last post in chorus? Did the pipes play the flowers of the forest?
The following is a copy of a letter sent from Captain J.M. Howlett, Officer Commanding A Company, 7th Battalion, Norfolk Regiment, to the Reverend Lawson, the incumbent Vicar of Haddiscoe in 1915. France, November the 14th, 1915. Sir, I regret to inform you, as you doubtless will have heard by this time from the War Office, that Privates Beaver, Flaxman and Wigg were reported missing. On October the 13th, their regiment took part in an assault under very heavy fire. Very few men of A Company even reaching the German trench. I'm very much afraid that I can hold out no hope of them still being alive. Though as we have been continuously in the trenches since my return, it has been difficult to hear of the many cases of this nature which have unfortunately occurred in my company. I knew all these men very well indeed. They had been with us practically from the beginning. I can only say that they were all three admirable, both as men and soldiers. None of them were ever the slightest trouble, and they always were ready for any of the tasks we are called upon to perform. They died doing their duty to their country, gallantly and cheerfully. If you could have seen the way in which they charged, you would have been proud of them indeed. I regret that I've been so long answering your letter, but I was myself wounded in the charge, and have only recently returned to the regiment. Will you please convey to the families of these men the very deep sympathy of their comrades and myself for them. I am, sir, your obedient servant, Captain J.M. Howlett, Officer Commanding A Company, 7th Norfolk Regiment.
In 1914, Rupert Brooke joined the Royal Navy Reserve, and it was in Port Said in 1915 that he was bitten by a mosquito. He was transferred to a French hospital ship and died the next day, aged 27. The cause of death was given as septicemia. He was buried in a beautiful olive grove on the Greek island of Skyros. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be, in that rich earth, a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shaped, made aware, gave once her flowers to love, her ways to roam, a body of England's breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by suns of home. And think, this heart all evil shed away, a pulse in the internal mind, no less, gives somewhere back the thoughts by England given, her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, and laughter learnt of friends, and gentleness in hearts at peace under an English heaven.
In case you're wondering what the uniform is, it's Swiss. The Swiss weren't actually involved in the First World War. There's a story that the Kaiser met with the President of Switzerland before war broke out, and he said, "What would you 240 strong part-time army do if I sent 500 trained German troops over the border?" And the answer was, they'd all shoot twice and go home. But as you might guess from the accent, I'm Scottish, so this is a Scottish poem by Robert Service, who immigrated to Canada from Scotland and served as a Red Cross man in the First World War. You may talk of your lutes and your dulcimers fine, your harps and your cymbals and tabors and all, but here in the trenches, just give me for mine the wee penny whistle of Sandy McGraw. For it's Sandy, my lad, will you give us a tune? And Sandy is willing and trilling like mad, so silvery sweet that you all gather round, and some of it's gay, but mostly it's sad. The simple wee airs that sink into your heart and grip you with love and longing for hame, and you glower like an owl till you're feeling the start of a tear, and you blink with a feeling of shame. For his songs are the heather, and here in the dirt you listen and think of a land that's so broad, and he makes you forget all the harm in the heart, for he plays like a labyrinth, your Sandy McGraw. I remember at Ypres when rank upon rank we rose from the trenches and swept like a gale, till the quick-firing guns got us fell in the flank, and the murdering bullets came flying like hail. Till all that were left of us faltered and broke, till it seemed for a moment a panicky rout, and then through the fumes and the flash and the smoke, the valiant wee voice of a whistle piped out. The Campbells are coming, and into the fray we bounded with bayonets reeking and raw, and my, we fair revelled in glory that day, just thanks to the whistle of Sandy McGraw. At Lewes, it was after a scunnersome fight, in the land of the slain I was crawling about. The rockets were burning red holes in the night, and the guns that were viciously thundering out. And sudden I heard it sound like a sigh, and there in a crumple, a kiltie I saw. "What ails you, my lad? Are you wounded?" said I. "I've lost my wee whistle," said Sandy McGraw. "It was out beyond Big where we pressed the attack. It fell out of my pouch, and between now and dawn there isn't much time, so I'm just crawling back." "You're daft, man," I told him. But Sandy was gone. Well, I waited a wee, then I crawled out myself, and the big stuff was roaring and goring around, and I seemed to be under the oxford of hell, and creation was breaking to bits with a sound. And I said in my mind, "Get your back, you old fool." Then I thrilled to a sound that was saucy and small, and there in the crater, collected in cool wee penny whistle, was Sandy McGraw. Aye, Sandy was playing as bled as you please, and listening hard was a spectacled Bosch. And Sandy turned round and looked up at me and said, "Dinna clout to Sergeant McTosh. This old chap is dying. He likes me to play. It's making him happy. Just see his eyes shine." And there in the midst of the fight and the fray, wee Sandy was playing the watch on the Rhine. The last scene of all was the day that we took that black bit of ground that they call Labyshell. It seemed the whole hillside had shivered and shook, and the red skies were roaring and spewing out shell. And the sergeants were strained to keep us in hand as hard in the leash we were straining like dogs. And upwards we sprung at the word of command, and the bullets were dinging their songs in our lugs. And onward we swept with a yell and a cheer, and always destruction, confusion and din. And we knew that the trench of the Boches was near, and it just seemed the safest bit hole to be in. So we all tumbled down, and the Boches were there, and they held up their hands and they cried, "Camarade!" And I marched off with 10 with their hands in the air, and Maya was proud like, and Maya was glad. And I thought, if my lassie could just see me then suddenly, I started at something I saw, and I stopped, and I stared, and I halted my men, for there in a stretch was Sandy McGraw. And Sandy looked up just as game as you please, and you know how I hate the working, said he, but now I can play in the street for bobbies, with both of my legs sticking off at the knee. And I thought he seemed to be racked with pain as he picked up his whistle and started to play. And silvery sweet came the pensive refrain, the flowers of the forest are all weed away. Then suddenly stop it. My was the grant we took on the trenches. He's shaking his head. I'll no play nae mair. Feebly down from his hand dropped the wee penny whistle, and Sandy was dead. And so you may talk of your Steinways and Strads, your wonderful organs and brasses so broad, but here in the trenches, just give me, my lads, the wee penny whistle of Sandy McGraw.
I'm here today to remember Victor Beaver and Harold Beaver who fell in the Great War. Victor and Harold were my granddad's two eldest brothers. There are 11 children in the family, and Granddad Rolf was number 6, and he was born in 1901. The family home was a small 2-bedroom cottage on Thorpe Road, so with a large family it must have been very cramped. The 1911 census shows that Victor and Harold were actually lodging with next door neighbours at that time. Victor signed up at the start of the war. He went to Norwich on November 17, 1914 to sign up along with William Patrick and Absalom Flaxman, also from the village. And they served together in the 7th Norfolk Regiment. Victor died at the age of 21 on the 13th of October 1915 in France at the Battle of Loos, alongside both William and Absalom, who he had enlisted with less than 1 year previously. They were supposed to attack under the cover of a smoke screen, but by the time the command was given, the smoke had started to clear, and they all ran directly into enemy fire. And Harold Beaver. Before the war, Harold was a farm labourer. The 1911 census shows this, although he would have only been aged 13 at that time. It is recorded that he enlisted for some reason in Wroxham. Harold was a private in the Norfolk Regiment, but also later served in the 1st and 8th Battalion of the Warwickshire Regiment. Harold died, aged 19, on the 4th of October 1917 at the 3rd Battle of Ypres, we now know as Passion Day. There is a Beaver family photograph taken on the 24th of October 1917, the golden wedding anniversary of Victor and Harold's grandparents. The photo also shows Victor and Harold's parents. This photograph was taken less than 3 weeks after Harold's death. Whether the tragic news had reached them by then, we just don't know.
raise standards.
Right. Round two. There was tremendous luck for some people in the First World War, and this story is about luck. Good luck, a mixture of good luck and bad luck. But it's just to show that luck played a lot in the survival of the soldiers in the First World War. This is called the Observation Balloon. It's by Flight Sergeant W. Sylvanus Lewis of the Royal Flying Corps. In the early part of May 1916, before the big Vimy Ridge battle, in the morning, soon after sunrise, the balloon ascended with Lieutenant H and myself to about 5,000 feet. Everything was at peace except an anti-aircraft gun showing evident anger at an annoying mosquito that was buzzing over enemy country. That bark was the only sound that made one realise that a tragic war was on. For people with jaded nerves who are perplexed with the ceaseless hurry, bustle and noise of modern life, I recommend a few hours up aloft in a kite balloon as a tonic and respite for its cares and worries. There's a charming and attractive calm and quietness about the experience that is recuperative and restful. Of course, this is not recommended whilst there is a war on, because the clouds can harbour unseen, unknown terrors and instruments of destruction. For instance, the enemy developed an astonishing accuracy in shelling kite balloons with shrapnel. I have had some uncomfortable half hours with this kind of attack. This morning in May, one shell burst towards our balloon. Only one, but it left us guessing as to when the next would be sent over, for the enemy rarely let us off with only one. But this morning he did. He was kind to us that day. Our object in this morning was to locate a very annoying gun that kept everybody in our sector of the front on tenterhooks by its back area of firing, a nasty, irritating business. We nicknamed the gun Ginger, and its explosive crumps gave everyone the jumps. A hollow bang would be faintly heard in the distance, and before you could count two, with a terrific whooping crump, a high-explosive shell would burst in the air. We were out to locate this gun, but for a long time, Lieutenant H and I did not trouble much about guns. We were too enraptured with the glorious sunrise. It was wonderful, marvellous. Words fail me to express what I felt. I felt very near to what some people call the infinite, whatever they may mean. Or as some may say, near to God. But whatever it was, I was thinking and feeling, I began to realise in some dim way, to be absorbed in a vision of unutterable beauty is a fine experience. I was thinking that it was good to have been born, just to experience that one thing. I thought of many other things in a rambling sort of way. Bang! Like a big drum being struck, swish, rip, a sign, whistle, a noise, or rather a shriek like the tearing of some gigantic piece of canvas. What's happened? Gee, the balloon has burst. It had collapsed about us, and we were coming down. I desperately struggled to push away the fabric of the balloon from the basket, and suddenly, from underneath the mountain of fabric, I glimpsed the white face of Lieutenant H. "We must jump," he said. I agreed with him, and immediately dived over head first, and nearly dived through my harness. It had no shoulder straps, only a waistband and loops for one's legs. Never shall I forget that sickening, horrible sensation when, in my first rush through the air, I felt my leg loops at my knees and my waistband round my buttocks. I managed, however, to grab hold of the thick rope which is toggled from the waistband to the parachute. Meanwhile, everything else seemed to go wrong. The cords of the parachute somehow in the struggle got entangled round my neck, so that as the parachute began to open with a deadly pull on my body, I was literally being strangled in mid-air. The sensation was horrible and unforgettable. My face seemed to swell to twice its size, and my eyeballs to become too big for their sockets. Then I was suddenly free and could breathe again, but my neck was badly lacerated and raw. My bad luck was not over, however, because I was suddenly pulled up with a sharp jerk that jarred every bone in my body. I had fouled the cable which held the balloon to the winch, and my parachute had, in striking it, coiled itself round about 3 or 4 times. Suspended in mid-air, I remained in that helpless position for what seemed like hours, and I looked down and saw Lieutenant H, his parachute getting smaller and smaller. Then I slowly began to unwind. Round and round I went like a cork, and broke away with a rush, the silk of my parachute being torn almost across, and I began hurtling down at a great speed, with my damaged and useless parachute flapping above me. I had seen a couple of parachute accidents, and I knew what to expect. I could do nothing but curse at the damned bad luck I was having. I have read that face after face of one's friends and scenes of one's past haunt one when in danger. It's perfectly true because I actually experienced it. Crash! I had shut my eyes. I thought I had struck the ground, but no. In a slanting, rushing dive, I had struck poor old H's parachute, and the force of my fall had caused his parachute to collapse. "Sorry," I shouted. One had to shout, I remember, for the wind seemed to be blowing a gale, although actually it was a calm, sunny day. "Sorry, but I couldn't help it." "It's all right, old man," he shouted, "but couldn't you find some other bloody place to land? Millions of acres about you, yet you pick on me to fall on." "It looks like finish," he continued. It did. Suddenly, his parachute began to bellow out with a flapping roar, tumbling me off like a feather, but I was too inextricably bound up with his cords to shoot away altogether. Incidentally, I was hanging like grim death to something or other. What it was I don't know, but I imagine it was about half a dozen of his parachute cords. And so we landed, 2 in 1 parachute. At least I landed first, because I seemed to slip down just before we landed, and he landed full weight on top of me. I know nothing of what happened immediately after, but I heard subsequently that we had landed almost in the support trenches, and scores of Canadians had rushed out and gathered round us, and that the enemy thought it was a fine opportunity to drop a few shells around.
One, two, three, 4. I was all alone. at the top of there, the reason that I'm doing this is due to my granddad, who's pictured on his horse at the back. The army could not have functioned without horses. In 1914, the army had only 25,000. So they requisitioned horses, and 1 million came from Britain. Military impressment squads descended on villages like the naval press gangs of yesteryear to round up all the horses. One witness recalled, "Everything in our village was done by horses. The khaki men tied them all together on a long rope. I think there were about 20. All the horses we used to know and love and feed." These horses were vital for cavalry roles, moving supplies, equipment, guns and ammunition, and transporting the wounded to hospital. 15% died each year, but only a quarter of those were by direct enemy action. Most died of debility, conditions caused by exposure to the elements, hunger and illness. At the end, around 62,000 returned home and 25,000 remained in the British Army. The Warhorse Memorial, dedicated to the millions of horses lost in the Great War, was unveiled on the 8th of June this year near the Ascot racecourse. Poppy stands 6 metres tall, barbed wire from no man's land wrapped around her feet. Her body starved and covered in mud and minor wounds. Her head is bowed in mourning, and a tear falls from one eye. The following poem was written by her creator and sculptor, Susan Leyland. The Warhorse who returned. From this peaceful land to hellfire we were sent. Bomb blasts, shell fire and barbed wire, explosions, fearful gas and groans, lay man and beast wrenched and maimed. On foreign soil last breaths exhaled. Through horror, fear and pain, knee-deep mud, cold and rain, we heaved and pulled with little to sustain. We don't feel like heroes, though heroic tasks were done. We knew it was our duty to get the battle won. I am home again at last. My legs are swollen and my body weak. My skin and cuts are healing, but I cannot forget. So here in silence, with lowered head, above battlefield remnants and letters of love, I stand to honour forever the memory of all who came not home.
This next song's called No Heroes, No Cowards. Again, it's taken from the memories of 14 Monday. Now if you saw a soldier covered all in medals, if you asked us being a hero feels so good, he'd as like as not reply, I'm not a hero and here's why. I came to give my best, did the best I could. How about you folk out there, you people looking on? Are you heroes? Are you cowards? Could you say? If they stuck a rifle in your hand, marched into a trench, would you be brave or would you run the other way? Now if you saw a soldier standing in court-martial, trying to make his cowardly actions understood, if you asked him why he ran, he'd say, I'm not an evil man. I only did what I was told and what I should. How about you folk out there, you people looking on? Are you heroes? Are you cowards? Could you say? If they stuck a rifle in your hand, marched into a trench, would you be brave or would you run the other way? So if you see a soldier walking down the high street, in his khaki neatly pressed just off the shelf, you can't guess, don't think you can, if he's a brave or timid man. And it's as like as not, he doesn't know himself. How about you folk out there, you people looking on? Are you heroes? Are you cowards? Could you say? If they stuck a rifle in your hand, marched into a trench, would you be brave or would you run the other way?
Before the war, my grandfather, William Cullen, was employed as a blacksmith and farrier in the village, working for Walter Cool at the forge in Church Lane. In 1916, he enlisted as a sapper with the Royal Engineers, and though there are no surviving records of his movements in France or Belgium, we know from the examples of his trench art that one is inscribed Verdun, while another is inscribed Lille and Ypres, 1918. Family history says he worked with horses during the course of his service, and at some stage later was injured in a gas attack which killed several of his comrades. After the war, he returned home to resume his occupation. His younger brother Leonard, however, was not so fortunate. Leonard Robert Cully was born in 1892, and along with my grandfather was one of 5 children of Charles and Rose Cully, who lived in Haddiscoe for most of their lives. Leonard is aged 19 on the 1911 census, where his occupation is entered as market gardener. He enlisted at the outbreak of war, and as a gunner he served with the 2nd Artillery Group, the Royal Garrison Artillery. He was subsequently injured in battle and died in hospital of his wounds on the 25th of April 1917, and was buried at Etarpus Military Cemetery. He was 25. Leonard's elder sister Gertrude married Marcus Barry Flaxman, another resident of Haddiscoe, and in the 1911 census they are listed as living on Haddiscoe Hill, and Marcus is entered as a fisherman. On the 10th of September 1917, while serving with the Royal Naval Reserve as a cool trimmer aboard the trawler Loch Arn, Marcus and 4 others were killed when it was attacked and sunk by a U-boat off the coast of Gloucester. He is commemorated on the Chatham Naval Memorial count. He was aged 37. Absalom Clayton Flaxman, aged 39, was the elder brother of Marcus and also a fisherman. He enlisted in the 7th Battalion of the Royal Norfolk Regiment, part of Kitchener's 1st New Army, which saw action at the Battle of Lewes, which began on the 30th of September 1915. In total, 117 officers and 3,257 men of the division were killed or wounded. As mentioned earlier, Absalom was killed in action on the 13th of October 1915 alongside Victor Beaver and Freeman Wigg, and all are commemorated on the Lewes Memorial. All too often the women who are left behind and suffer in silence are overlooked or forgotten, such as Gertrude, who throughout the course of the conflict lost her husband, brother and brother-in-law.
spring 1918 underway, and which almost won the war for Germany, the Commander-in-Chief of the British armies in France, Field Marshal Sir Douglas Haig, issued the following. General Headquarters, Tuesday, April the 11th, 1918. Special orders of the day. To all ranks of the British Army in France and Flanders. 3 weeks ago today, the enemy began his terrific attacks against us on a 50-mile front. His objects are to separate us from the French, to take the Channel ports, and destroy the British Army. In spite of throwing already 106 divisions into the battle and enduring the most reckless sacrifice of human life, he has as yet made little progress towards his goals. We owe this to the determined fighting and self-sacrifice of our troops. Words fail me to express the admiration which I feel for the splendid resistance offered by all ranks of our army under the most trying circumstances. Many amongst us now are tired. To those, I would say that victory will belong to the side which holds out the longest. The French army is moving rapidly and in great force to our support. There is no other course open to us but to fight it out. Every position must be held to the last man. There must be no retirement. With our backs to the wall and believing in the justice of our cause, each one of us must fight on to the end. The safety of our homes and the freedom of mankind alike depend upon the conduct of each one of us at this critical moment. Signed, D. Haig, Field Marshal, Commander-in-Chief, British Armies in France.
What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer.
When this lousy war is over, no more soldiering for me. When I get my civvy clothes on, oh, how happy I shall be. No more more church parades on Sunday. No more putting in for leave. I will kiss the Sergeant Major. How he'll miss me, how he'll grieve. No more standing to in trenches. Only one more church parade. No more NCOs to curse us. No more Tickler's marmalade. People said when we enlisted, fame and medals we would win. But the fame is in the guard room, and those medals made of tin. When this lousy war is over, no more soldiering for me.
Extracts from 4 quartets by T.S. Eliot, 1888 to 1965. History may be servitude. History may be freedom. See, now they vanish, the faces and places, with the self which, as it could, loved them, to become renewed, transfigured in another pattern. Sin is behovely, but all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. If I think again of this place and of people, not wholly commendable, of no immediate kin or kindness, but of some peculiar genius, all touched by a common genius, united in the strife which divided them. These men, and those who opposed them, and those whom they opposed, accept the constitution of silence, and are folded in a single party. Whatever we inherit from the fortunate, we have taken from the defeated. Whatever they had to leave us, a symbol perfected in death. And all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, by the purification of the motive in the ground of our beseeching. We die with the dying, see they depart and we go with them. We are born with the dead, see they return and bring us with them. The moment of the rose and the moment of the yew tree are of equal duration. A people without history is not redeemed from time, for history is a pattern of timeless moments. So, while the light fails on a winter's afternoon, in a secluded chapel, history is now, and England. And all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, when the tongues of flame are enfolded into the crowned knot of fire, and the fire and the rose are one.
Death was not to be denied. targets in doomed battalion. Fritz and Tommy had to pay. There's a look I recognise when I see it in a soldier's eyes. You were there among the doomed battalion. You saw death with no disguise. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. They shall not grow old. Now it's done and I survived. Why should I be spared and left alive? I am not numbered with the bright battalion. I call a fail to arrive. Paper poppies tumble down. Single bugle lets the last post sound. Age shall not weary the bright battalion. In memory only they are found. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. They shall not grow old. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. They shall not grow old.
As 1917 dawned, the volunteer battalions of 1914 had been decimated, and the surge of volunteers had dwindled to a trickle. By this stage, 95% of the British peacetime army was either dead, wounded, or missing. Consequently, conscription for both single and married men was introduced. Conscription boards sent men where they were needed, breaking down county allegiances and friendship groups seen in the first months of the war. New and terrible weapons were now being used by both sides to break the stalemate on the Western Front. Chlorine gas, mines, flamethrowers, and attack from the air became increasingly common, and so the losses mounted. Newspapers had by this stage stopped printing photos of the dead or missing, pushing the long list of the victims towards the back pages in order not to damage morale. It is therefore not surprising to find the largest concentration of fatalities from Haddiscoe occurring in 1917 and 1918. Such was the scale of loss that even official military records become vague. Take Private Ernest Patrick, who is buried in Grandcourt, France. His file is simply marked, killed in action, February 17th, 1917. The records of other Haddiscoe soldiers, Isidore Youngs, Leonard Cully, Harold Beaver, George Haynes, who died in Gaza, and Geoffrey Buxton, who died in Italy a few days before the armistice, are all similarly adorned with the rubber stamp of officialdom. Killed in action. Even those who received medals for gallantry achieved little more recognition. Acting Sergeant George Grimmer had been awarded the military medal. The builder from Borough St Peter had been in France 2 years when he was killed during an organised withdrawal from an abandoned enemy trench. The regimental diary simply states, only one casualty was incurred. Other branches of the services were also incurring casualties. The Royal Naval Reserve lost Barry Flaxman of Haddiscoe in September 1917, and fisherman Harry Simons of Toft Monks on February 14, 1918, when his wooden minesweeper was attacked by German battle cruisers in full view of Royal Navy ships who failed to offer support. Tragic accidents and illness also took their toll. Rifleman Leonard Haynes of Haddiscoe is recorded as having died at Northampton on the 24th of October 1918, aged 18, but no further information is given. The case of Private William Mills, who lived at Haddiscoe railway station, is another such tragedy. Conscripted in September 1917, he completed his training and was sent to France, arriving there on April 2nd, 1918. 10 days later, he was listed as missing. His body was never found. He was 18. The photo of his childlike face is left to rest forever in the County Record Office, denied even the dignity of a solemn gravestone. Lance Corporal Reginald Randlesome, who had volunteered with other men from the village in 1914, had survived Luce and the Somme despite injury. In November 1917, he was discharged as medically unfit, diagnosed with tuberculosis. He was sent home to live with his widowed father in a small cottage on Low Road, Haddiscoe, overlooking the marshes. After lingering for a year, he passed away in September 1918, aged 20. His is the only Commonwealth war grave in the churchyard. By the time the armistice was declared, it had seemed that the war to end all wars would never end. The news was greeted with sheer apathy in the trenches. Those who had survived were slowly demobilised and sent home. They were each awarded 3 medals to show they had taken part. There was no counselling and fewer jobs available for them. For many, their war service remained a painful memory and was never discussed. Large photographs of soldiers and sailors, most of them dead, dominated the living rooms of nearly every house in the land. As memorials were established, both locally and nationally, the dead were remembered. Haddiscoe Church has 4 memorials. However, quite inexplicably, the names of 4 men from the village have been omitted. John Stone, aged 24, the son of the station master. Frederick Brabham, aged 35, from Thorpe. Alec Cushion, aged 19, the son of a market gardener on Church Hill. And Robert Garwood, a railway labourer, were placed on neither the stone cross, brass plaque, marble tablets, or the roll of honour. A wreath of poppies made in the village has now redressed this. So we take this opportunity to remember these men for the first time in 100 years. For some, the war lasted long after 1918 and hounded them to the grave. Haddiscoe men Charles Grimmer, Cecil Pitcher and Edward Jennis all succumbed to war injuries in the ensuing decade, their names being added to the wayside cross over 10 years after peace was officially declared. But, if we remember the dead, we must also remember the living. 27 men from this village died. However, 17 others survived to return to their homes and families, at least physically unscathed. Between them, they have no memorial. We should think kindly of these men, the survivors who were relieved to have got through it all. They returned to their families, to their humble cottages, and to their hard, monotonous labours. No doubt they were glad to see the sun setting over the marshes once again, glad of a drink in the Crown in the 3 Tuns, glad to dress for church on Sunday. We have seen their children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren help shape the village just as their forebears did. So we remember those survivors this evening. To William Allerton and George Bands, to Kenneth Buck and Sidney Buck, to John Barwood and William Cully, to Harold Farman and John Gowing, to Charles Howlett and Alfred Kett, to Charles Leader and Stephen Patrick, to William Randlesome and John Reed, to Walter Rump, Arthur Sherwood and to John William Smith, we say thank you, for it's the very least they deserve.
It's a long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the
too important. I'm here purely to say thank you, and it is my pleasure to be able to do so. Firstly, to all those involved in keeping both these wonderful churches open and functioning, and to bring them back as an integral part of community life. Both teams have worked tirelessly to organise craft fairs, coffee mornings, teas, talks and concerts, not to mention the pub quizzes and the brow-furrowing quiz sheets, which are designed with humour and imagination. None of this can happen without time, organisation, preparation and communication. So I give a vote of thanks to all those involved. It is also a good opportunity to say that if you wish to be involved and would like to be part of a lively group, then talk to a member of either team. The second reason is to say a big thank you to someone who no longer lives in the village but who still plays a big part and has worked hard to put this programme together, as well as organise the grass cutting, car parking and lighting to make the evening such a success. And we would like to present a token of our thanks to Ian Barclay for all the time and effort he's put in, and hope that he will continue to be part of the life of these churches. Well, I could thank everybody else as well, and all the contributors.
Yes, I would like to thank
very, very much.
who gave up their time to come here this evening. I think the evening's gone very well. There are no professionals here. It's all down to people who've given up their time to put this whole thing together. I think it's all gone extremely well. So thanks very much to everybody involved. I'm going to open this, which I think is a painting. Oh. Right, it's a painting in Haddiscoe Church. I'm not going to take this because I've got to transport it. So, yes, so thanks very much. And thanks to you for coming tonight.
Tribute to the millions. Let us remember those who so selflessly gave their lives at home and abroad, whose sacrifice enables us to enjoy the peace and freedom we have today. Let us remember those who came home wounded physically and mentally, and the friends and family who cared for them. Let us remember those who returned to restore their relationships and rebuild their working lives after years of dreadful conflict and turmoil. Let us remember the families that lost husbands, sons and sweethearts. Let us remember the servicemen, merchant seamen, miners, brave civilians and others from Commonwealth and Allied countries who fought, suffered and died during 4 years of war. Let us remember those in reserved occupation and the brave people who kept us safe on the home front, the doctors and nurses who cared for the wounded, the women and men who toiled in the fields, those who worked in the factories, who all played such a vital role in the war effort at home. And a blessing. The blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be with you all this evening, this day, every day. Amen. Would you please all be upstanding?